Mark McAfee is a force to be reckoned with as far as the raw milk world goes. He's been doing it for a very long time, has one of, if not the largest raw milk dairy, raw farms in the country, and he has the passion for local and freedom, food freedom, and I just absolutely think the world of Mark, and he lays out a wonderful, wonderful resource in this conversation to help us make better decisions going forward. Recently, we had a little run-in with the health department here in Arkansas based off of retailing pet food. And so wanted to reach out to you because I don't know if there's anybody more experienced or well-versed in the raw milk world than you. So if you will, let's lay out just a little bit of the foundation why you're somebody that can definitely give us advice as we go forward.
Well, I'm a student, and I learn and I listen and I tenacious, and I don't give up until we win. And it's not easy. So if that gives you kind of a framework for the discussion, I will say we do have raw pet food that's labeled appropriately under the FDA rules in many of the 50 states. I think 40 states we've got it in there, including Alabama. There's 7 stores carrying the product right now in your state. However, there's nuances to the local approval process. Your state may have regulation. They may accept the FDA regulation or reject it and have their own. Like for instance, great example is Colorado would not allow us to have our product on the shelf there because you had to decharacterize it with a coloring, and we refused to put coloring in our products. So we realized that, okay, the FDA has a list of colorings that are approved, and the state of Colorado didn't have a list of colorings that were approved. They just said you had to decolor it or make it different than white. You had to add some color. Well, the interesting thing is that under the FDA list of colorings, one of the products we add as a natural ingredient is approved. And so we were able to say, because it's yellowish, it's now decharacterized as milk, and their state had to allow us. So we didn't get all of our products in there, but we had a kefir with cinnamon, turmeric, which is yellow, and ginger in the kefir were approved because the turmeric changed the color. And the state didn't specify the color, but the FDA said it was okay. It was on their okay list. So that's the kind of detailed nuance behind the scene on a state-by-state kind of thing that happens. Other states said, oh, you can't be on the shelf until you give us $200 for a permit. They didn't care. They just wanted $200. So you pay them the $200 and it's done. Other states didn't care because they accepted the FDA standards and you were good to go if the FDA approved it. So it's state by state, but we do know that we're, after your conversation with me the other day on text back and forth, I did text the state and ask them to make sure there wasn't some further additional process that we had to go through for our products to be sold in that state. They have yet to respond to me. They said, send me your labels. I did that 3 days ago and they haven't responded yet. They are FDA approved labels, which are different than for human consumption. They're for pet food consumption, which have different kinds of things they measure. It's like how many ounces per pound, that kind of thing, like you're feeding your cat or your dog. However, we do know that, for instance, in Florida, pet food is an accepted thing sold in the stores and people buy it all day long for human consumption. So it's kind of a mishmash of chaos of across the United States where raw milk is legal, illegal, cow shares, pet food, legal on store shelves. It's kind of a local mess, if you know what I mean. And I think the FDA likes it that way because they don't want to see raw milk get particularly organized and start dominating.
Well, Mark, and that's kind of my whole thing with this entire mess is that I don't understand why we're not able to choose that. Nobody's trying to criminalize pasteurized milk. We just want to be able to get whatever we want from the farmers that we want. And that's the big mismatch that I'm having a hard time understanding. If this is for public health, right? And I, as a adult American, want to buy and drink this milk, why there's any legislation outside of allowing me to do that?
You're speaking very simple and to the truth of it. As a consumer. I think they're seeing it for what it is. Let me go down a laundry list of why the FDA hates raw milk. Number one, they have never wrapped their brains around, accepted, or studied or appreciated the standards we're using for raw milk intended for human consumption. They have one set of standards, Logan. That standard is excusing filth that appeared in the 1800s. That standard is whatever comes to the creamery, it gets cooked to death, and it's going to be rendered safe by killing everything. It's filthy milk. You take 40 different dairies, you dump them all in one big tank, it's going to always have a pathogen. It's going to have Listeria, E. coli, Salmonella, Campylobacter, plus God knows what else in there, and very, very high bacteria counts. That's the standard that the FDA has under the pasteurized milk ordinance. That's the only one they accept, the only one they acknowledge. They will not acknowledge what we do in California under legal raw milk standards, where we have to meet and exceed pasteurized milk bacterial standards without pasteurizing. Think about that. So it's very interesting that the FDA absolutely just blocks, brain blocks, regulatory blocks, policy blocks, anything they can to stop any discussion of raw milk intended for human consumption. That goes all the way to the top. Dr. Stick, same guy. He doesn't agree with that. He puts it on his private LinkedIn that he hates raw milk. So there's no discussion. They won't meet with us. They won't go to the same conventions as us. They won't acknowledge their own PubMed research on what we've done already that's peer-reviewed, that shows that it's very safe. Meanwhile, they're recalling every product known to man every day, saying it's not safe, going crazy on the food. You've seen recalls every day. You can't believe it. They're recalling eggs right now. It's nuts what they're doing. It's surprising we have any food to eat. So the FDA is not on our wavelength. They are not connected to people. They're connected to pharmaceutical companies and are driven by pharmaceutical concepts and thoughts. Although I will say behind the scenes, the regulators and the policy guys are that way. But behind the scenes, we've got FDA scientists that love what we're doing. So the scientists get it, but they can't speak or they'll lose their jobs because the FDA is so connected to the big dairy processors that can't do raw milk. They literally cannot do raw milk because it would destroy everything they built. How can you collect from all the dairymen and cheat them? And how can you put it in one big tank? And how can you get long shelf life? All that doesn't work. So all their big processing plants, billions of dollars would have to be rethought. And even worse than that, they'd have to say, by the way, there's some really good things found in raw milk that's good for you. And pasteurization is different than raw milk. They'd have to admit that. And that would destroy all of their publicly quoted claims for the last 50, 60 years. Let me tell you something. There's a study that was done in 2021, December 8th, by Dr. Tien Tin Lin at Cornell University, funded by the National Dairy Council. They said exactly what I just said. It said there are things in raw milk, they call it unprocessed milk, called bioactives that are fantastic for your immune system, your gut, everything about you. And they listed them all out. And they went about trying to find a technology to extract them out of raw milk to make a new patented product. So they've admitted this just 3 years ago that post-COVID, consumers are very interested in the natural foods they can consume and the things they can do for their own gut microbiome, which is 80% of the immune system, to make it more adaptive and resilient in the face of new threats, COVID being one of them. Other ones coming next year. And every year we have a flu, killing 25,000 people a year, 22,000, whatever the number is. Get your flu shot is their answer. We're saying, wait a minute, you can do that if you want. But that flu shot was based on last year's flu, and it's only about 25 to 30% effective, sometimes more, sometimes less. And it has side effects. But drinking raw milk with its bioactives is protective of all the threats coming from the future towards you. So pharma doesn't like us. Big processors don't like us. The FDA doesn't like us. Consumers love us. So there you go. There's the battleground. It's consumers, it's farmers versus the processors and the FDA and big pharma and somewhat the establishment of the medical community that refuses to become educated and know what the heck we're doing. In California, we're the number one fluid milk being sold. We're growing at 1% per week. That's what kind of a threat we are. That's why they're so angry.
That's the consumer support, because I've been extremely public with this incident, right? We've got a huge following here in Arkansas, and it's broader than Arkansas, but the support for people wanting access. And Mark, kind of two different directions I want to go. On the health side, I'm blown away every day when I understand things and then find out that they are in the milk side. So ceruloplasm, lactoferrin, IgG, to name a few, are absolutely crucial to health, especially the health of babies. And so I caused a little bit of an uproar when I went after formula and how I believe that is complete garbage. It wasn't an attack on people that feed them. It was an attack on the corporations that make it. And then in the same token, they demonize raw milk that has all these bioactives in there that would strengthen our children. And so that one gets me really worked up. But we also have this issue that we can't make it easier on farmers, right? Like in Arkansas, you can buy directly from a farmer, but it's capped on like 500 gallons, right? They can only produce so much. We don't have enough production in Arkansas to even demand 1% of what it is. Like we don't have the production. Not only that, for the ones that want to scale, we're limited by retail. I cannot go buy milk as a grocery store owner and bring it into the store where I have 600,000 people within a 20-mile radius and have them get it without calling it pet milk, without having to do all this stuff. So we're hindering the local food system. And that's what I really have a problem with. Raw milk is, to me, Mark, it's the Boston Tea Party. It's not about the tea. It's not about the milk. It's about, as an American, we should be able to support ourselves with our own food.
Well, you've just given a local argument for what's going on in Arkansas. It's not good. It's terrible. And we're losing dairies like crazy all the time. Here's some workarounds for you. Number one, study what we've done to get into 7 stores. Study that. Use that as a model for the way to get in. Number two, if you have to go to the farm and get your raw milk, there's a way to work around that. Here's what you do. This is a theory that's worked in other states that's legal. It was done by an attorney and a raw milk producer that's listed by the Raw Milk Institute, by the way. And what they said was, no problem. You have to go to the farm. What's the law actually say? You have to buy from the farmer. You can't buy from a store. You have to pay the farmer. What they did was they put a refrigerated display case inside of a store, and the farmer paid the store a couple $100 a month for the right to have that display case in their store. All of the milk sold to the store was never sold to the store. It was never sold. It was delivered to the store and bought as a pre-purchased product online. It was actually not bottled in bottles. It was bottled in plastic bags. It had a logo and brand. It was beautifully done. It had the name of the consumer on the side that had already been bought online from the farmer. So you go into the store and there's a sign that said, this raw milk is not for sale. It was bought directly from this farmer. If you'd like to buy raw milk, contact this farmer. Here's the website, or here's the QR code, and you can buy this raw milk too. It'll be here next week for you. There's a workaround, okay? That wasn't bought at a store. It was delivered to the store by the farmer, already paid for by the consumer from the farmer. The farmer got the money. The store never got a dime. And so that's the kind of workaround. It's literally being innovative, being persistent, and also being a bit, what's the word I want to say? You have to kind of work around, but with force. You do it nicely, but at the same time, you speak quietly and kindly with a massive stick. Like you say, hey, health inspector, hey, I understand I made a mistake. I apologize. Let's go back to this again. Try this again. I understand these products are being sold here legally in Arkansas. They have this label. We want to do the same thing. Help me understand that. That kind of a dialogue, or this is what we want to do. And we don't want to have any problems because we know this is legal under the state constitution of Arkansas to do this. And in fact, the state law supports it. So it may look like a workaround, but this is the way we have to go about it. And then if they give you a reason to say, we're going to go to the courts. We're going to go to the courts. And they do not want that to happen because if you go to the courts, you expose all this mold, all this crap, and it makes it really look ugly for them. So they'll then work with you. But you basically have to get consumers together, and you have to get serious, and you have to get innovative, find a pathway workaround, and then you start doing it. And then you start building a market. And then you get 500 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people doing it. And then at some point you wake up a couple of years from now and say, we won. Because there's so many people doing this. The momentum is so great. It's so popular. Farmers are doing well. Consumers are reporting all these fantastic things happening to their kids and their parents and everybody. And then you can go to the legislator and say, oh, by the way, we want to change this. And you have tremendous support because you built a market. It's hard to change the law when you haven't built a market yet.
I think that's amazing advice. So on that, this is how I'm viewing like the next steps. I have actually drafted the Arkansas Prosperity and Food Sovereignty Bill, right? I want to roll it back, but nobody is arguing that we want things to not be safe, right? Nobody is saying that. Now, everything should be good standards, right? So trying to balance regulations with, common sense. You've been able to lay that out. So I have used the Raw Milk Institute as, hey, they have all the resources, and that's an organization you founded. So if I can't get a sponsor to pick this up and run with it, what we're looking at doing is trying to get it on the 2026 ballot. That's a big long process, right? Getting the signatures, doing that. Sure. Or what you just said is take it to court. And honestly, as I've talked to legislators, I've talked to consumers, I've talked to farmers, I've talked to healthcare professionals, I don't know that we don't just go straight for court and go straight for getting it changed on the constitutional level, because it really is that big of a deal, in my opinion, that we don't have the freedom to do it, right? It shouldn't have to have all these workarounds, Mark. It should be able to get food that you want to get.
Let me ask you a question, Logan. How many dairies did you have in Arkansas 10 years ago?
I don't know, but Mark, I believe it's 17 now that are on what we're talking about. That's terrifying.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting at is commercial dairies that were selling milk to be processed. How many dairies were in Arkansas 10 years ago or 5 years ago? I would venture a guess you had lots and lots of them. I don't know how many, but lots and lots of them. And you're down to very few now, and they're either very large or they've done something unique. But let me give you an example here, and it's something you can use when working with your legislature. First of all, get a really friendly, passionate consumer of raw milk to be your spokesman, somebody who really understands why you're speaking the way you are, what bioactive is. We'll do the work with us. So you have yourself a sponsor. Mr. Buxton was a state senator in Delaware. And he heard the plight of the farmers. He heard the plight of the consumers driving 2.5, 3 hours one way to Pennsylvania to get raw milk and drive it back because raw milk was illegal in Delaware. Well, after 8 months of testimony and education, Raw Milk Institute was intimately involved. We set the standards. We educated the farmers. We listed one of the farmers, Stephanie there, and her husband, Greg. They become listed producers. And the farmer, it was 2 years ago, they had 43 dairies. Now they're down to 13. Okay. That's how many dairies were lost in just a couple of years in Delaware because the economics didn't work. The quote from one of the farmers was, I only need to have 5 to 10 cows out of my entire 100-cow herd to be doing raw milk, and I'm profitable.
Wow.
In other words, he was going to continue to sell his milk to a cheese plant or whatever they were doing, but he was going to have 10 of his best cows segregated for use as raw milk for human consumption, and he would become profitable and sustainable as a dairy farm. And then the consumer said, I'm sick and tired of risking my life every week of the year, driving all the way down to Pennsylvania and driving all back. It's a carbon footprint issue, and it's a rights issue. It's a traffic hazard issue for my children driving down to Pennsylvania. This is crazy. Why can't farmers in Delaware support Delaware? And from that argument and the fact that we said, make Delaware raw milk world-class raw milk. Heck with those guys in Pennsylvania. They're doing their thing. Make it the best milk in the world, right? Not that we're putting down Pennsylvania, but make the best. So what do you know? Michael Skuse, who's the Secretary of Agriculture for Delaware, said, let's have world-class raw milk here. Let's do what Raw Milk Institute suggested. Let's put an on-farm lab. It only costs $800 on each of these farms who wants to do that. They can test their milk all week long and know what we got is super safe and super clean and delicious. He came from adamantly against raw milk for 20 years to promoting it, voting it, and saying, my administration is going to have world-class raw milk. He did that after Raw Milk Institute got involved in Delaware with the farmers and the consumers all together. So that's a great model for Arkansas. Because why not have world-class raw milk for your citizens that deserve to have bioactives in their milk, and your choice, your right to choose your food, not be told you can't have that. By the way, raw milk's the only food you can deny people legally in America. It's weird. You can get anything else, but you can't get raw milk. It's like that's how sharp that knife is. That's how tough that deal is with the processors that support. We don't want raw milk because it takes from our market. This is about money. This is all about money. So let's take the power. It goes to the people. Let's get the moms, the kids, the people that are enjoying this, empower them with a microphone so they speak. You're doing that right now on your podcast, but do that more in terms of a Senate hearing or a legislative hearing at your state legislature, where you get a committee that hears why we can't have raw milk there, and use the Delaware thing as a good way to go. I guarantee you, your health department's going to say, no way, we can't have it. And the FDA is going to send in somebody, and some veterinarian is going to say something. You say, you know what? We agree with you. But let's show you the standards of the raw milk we're talking about. You're talking about that filthy milk you're producing for pasteurization. I'm talking about raw milk that's really clean, coming from one farmer, fully taking responsibility, that knows what the heck they're doing, that's testing with their on-farm their on-farm lab. That's a different kind of milk. Have you ever seen these kind of bacteria counts? They're going to go, oh my God. So that's what you do to take them apart. At the same time, you don't ridicule them and say, we're not talking about that kind of milk. We agree that should be pasteurized. We're talking about the clean raw milk that cows are tested, this, that, and the other thing. And it's more expensive, but it's the choice of consumers to sustain their farmer and get this for their families. And that's the kind of plight that's going on all over America right now, and pretty publicly in some areas. Minnesota's doing it. Delaware's just completed it. It's going down. It's not easy. It takes about 8 months. It takes a year. But I tell you what, you can get some real passionate consumers to show up. You get scientists to show up. Myself, Margaret Coleman, who's a huge risk expert who used to work for the USDA, knows all the data and all the numbers. She's a huge supporter of Rummo. Peg Coleman's awesome. You've got a great group of people to back you up. The science is there 100%. And by the way, nobody says you shouldn't breastfeed your babies. That breastfeeding your babies is the most fantastic thing you can ever do because it does all these fantastic things for their gut and their immune systems. Well, I'm sorry, for the last 15,000 years, mankind's been getting this, quote, breast milk, this mammalian raw milk from cows, goats, sheep, horses, camels, reindeer all around the world for the last 15,000 years. And you're going to deny us access to the sustainable food that's got these bioactives in it that your big dairy processors agreed and have a PubMed article that shows how fantastic they are, including anti-cancer, immune system boosting, remineralization, anti-inflammatory, anti-hypertensive, all these things that they're going to try to patent a new pill or potion or food or something to make money while they're screwing the farmers. So you've got the evidence now to show what's going on. And it's just a matter of the people moving. And you're probably the leader, buddy. You're probably the leader.
And I can't thank you enough for your support and your help and the resources you've offered. One more aspect of all this that I'd really like to get your take on is the food security side of it. So, like, let's say we only were able to depend on big food and big dairy. How long, if we had, like the incident the hurricane that's headed to Florida right now, that's going to be terrible. The disruption. How big of a deal is the food security based on local versus the larger scales? Because if a grocery store only has a couple days worth of food on hand to stock, how long does a large dairy have on feed to sustain its herd versus a smaller dairy that can go a substantial time?
You can add this argument to national food security all day long, and I'll give you two quick stories here. I'll make them short. I here at Raw Farm during COVID, the big dairy operations were dumping their milk in the lagoons. The big dairies were dumping their milk because the processing plants couldn't receive the milk because they'd shut down the schools and they'd shut down restaurants and institutions. All they had was stores, and they couldn't shift it. They couldn't get new caps and labels. They couldn't do palleting. They couldn't distribute differently. And it took them like 60 to 90 days to get it half right. It was a mess. And during that period of time, our trucks came directly from our farm. We changed our protocols in about 4 hours. And we were able to change up and stop making cheese and start bottling more milk. And we had the entire shelf case to ourselves because the stores didn't have milk. In many of the stores we were delivering to, they didn't have product. So that's COVID. That was the COVID stress test. And we just thrived through that period. And the consumers saw that as a local resource. And we were at all the stores, never skipped a beat. Now, let's look at North Carolina right now on the west side, where they have a massive flooding this last week or 2 weeks ago with Hurricane Helene. One of our raw milk producers, he's an He's an ex-helicopter pilot from the Army. He's listed by Raw Milk Institute. He's milking 5-6 cows. He was the only milk product in his entire area because they could not bring anything on the roads because they were all closed. And he was serving his people, his local community, with food product when the stuff hit the fan. So you are absolutely correct that decentralization, localization, communitization, humanities, it's your neighbor, it's local, it's not massive stuff that's 1,000 miles away that's going to help you. They can't get to you. It's the local people, it's the neighbors that have raw milk that are going to be able to sustain you. And that's exactly what he did. He was milking the episode, and now they're just starting to get some relief to him after 10 days. So it's very interesting to see how local matters more than you think.
It absolutely does. And again, my friend, thank you so much for the help and the support, and the resources are absolutely invaluable. But the fact that you have been fighting for literally decades on this, you are absolutely the most well-versed person to give advice, and you're going to be the example. And as we forge ahead, because we will get these laws changed, we will make this right.
I think that what you find is the legislature warms up to it. They think, you know what, this is really popular. We don't find anybody beating a kid, except the establishment. We don't like them anyway. So you got the moms and the voters and the dads and the families going, we want this, we want this. And so the legislature actually becomes the heroes of the people. And they like that because they get revoted, right? They get, and yeah, they may get beat up a little bit by processors, but I'll tell you what, the processors have weakened tremendously because of loss of the dairies. And so your opposition has become much weaker in the last few years. And the dairy and the public health community, we kind of get them in a room and say, guys, we agree with you. We don't want pathogens in our milk. That's why these standards are so different. Let's educate you. Was it 15 years ago, Dr. Katrina Berg, Dr. Stephen Beam from the state of California, Dr. Katrina Berg from Raw Milk Institute, myself, presented to the Department of Health directors for all of the environmental health directors in California. 50 of them got together at Bass Lake. They had their yearly get-together. There were like 100 people in the room. And we presented about raw milk and why it's different and raw milk and illegal. And the state of California spoke, we talked about the science and a whole bit. At the end, they go, we just didn't know. All we've been heard of is the FDA has said raw milk's horrible. And we said, we understand that. That's half the story. If you do it filthy, we get it. We understand it. That's the standard that's excused to be further processed. We get that. But you haven't heard the other part of the story. And that's where you use clean practices and high standards and testing and all these kinds of things that you do on the farm. And you get a very low risk product. Sometimes it's zero risk. You never have a problem for years and years on end. And sometimes you have a problem once in a while, but it's very rare and nobody dies. And everybody's really thriving. The farmer and the consumers are all thriving. That's the kind of milk we're talking about. And so I think it's an educational process. And I think you do it with some peace and some grace, where you're not calling them names and saying, you suck. No, you say, no, come to us. We want to teach you about PubMed. You know what PubMed is? And they'll say, yeah, we know about PubMed. Well, we've got articles on PubMed that's researched, that's peer-reviewed and journal published. That's the language they speak. That's what they're supposed to follow. And you say, please read these PubMed articles. And they start to soften. They start to go neutral, if not positive. I don't think a lot of them go positive because it kind of ruins their FDA relationship. But they do go neutral. And that's what happened up in Delaware is they went from anti to neutral, which is fantastic. It's a win. So you can do that down in Arkansas too.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for all of that. If you want raw milk and you can't get it locally, definitely check out Raw Farms. Y'all are absolutely a godsend. And again, Mark, thank you.
Well, unfortunately, our raw farm dairy products, yes, they're in stores, extremely expensive. So what I would do is go and buy one and taste it. But you need to go to your local farmer to actually sustainably consume it. We're at $52 a gallon. It's insane. It's $13 a quart. It's frozen, and we've got the kefir and stuff. And it's labeled for pet food. So that is what it is. We don't suggest anything other than that. But I will tell you, it is exactly the same product that consumers buy in California with a different label. Bottom line. So we, same standards, same testing, same with a different label. So we totally, pets need it badly. They're suffering. Their guts are all messed up and they have all kinds of issues too. And pets and humans share a lot of the same immune system. They're mammals. They're not exactly the same, but they're very similar. So yeah, this will absolutely inspire and help your local raw milk producers to do better, because people are going to say, we love raw farm, but we can't afford $52. I get that. I respect that. It much better be at $12 to $14 at a local farm, that the farmer's going to do well and consumers would thrive as well. So we are all about local. And by the way, it's interesting, we live in a capitalist country, and I'm supposed to say, oh, no, don't worry about local. I care very much about my fellow farmer. Here's the reason why. Number one, it's what Christ would do, number one. And number two, we share customers. People move from Arkansas to California to Arkansas all the time. And when they drink our product, they want something like it. So they're going to go home and they're going to say, where's raw milk around here, guys? Come on. And they're going to want to go to a farmer that has high standards and knows what they're doing. So the same thing goes for that person going from Arkansas to California. It's already happened back and forth in many states. People say, oh my God, thank you for having Rami training in these other states, because I'm their best customer because I love your product in California. So we all share our customers, which is a beautiful thing. So when the local farmers there build their customer base, they're building mine. And when I'm building my customer base, I'm building his or hers. So this is very much a we project, and I'm all about humanity and what Christ would do, buddy, all the way.
And you've lived it, my friend, and you have lived it. Mark, thank you, brother. Thank you for joining us in the Sowing Prosperity mission. If you like this content, like and subscribe, share with your friends. Be sure to check out sowingprosperity.com. Sign up for the email. We've got so much more work to do.